What's going on, everyone? James Hancock here. I'm back with a quick review of episode 3 of season 3 of True Detective, an episode called The Big Never. Now, before tonight, I was debating whether or not I should do reactions to each and every episode or just wait until the end of the season, but I feel like anytime there's some interesting news related to the show or a standout episode, I figure I should dive back in. But the truth is that after season 2, I'm still a little gun-shy about the show and a little reluctant to commit totally. But after tonight's very solid episode, I think I'm fully on board. From what I've been reading online so far about total viewers, the season 3 premiere was not as strong as that of season 2, which I think is understandable because I think a lot of people out there are still feeling a little betrayed by the lackluster season 2, but I think some strong word of mouth about season 3 will get those numbers back up. In terms of the first 3 episodes of the season, all I can say is, so far, so good. But I saw some other news related to the show that interests me in an article by Naomi Gordon on digitalspy.com, and in an interview with Stephen Dorff, he talked about some creative tension between series creator Nick Pizzolatto and HBO. Apparently HBO is pushing Pizzolatto to pick up the pace on some episodes and tighten up the running times, but I imagine that's probably business as usual on any show in TV. But the really interesting part of the interview was when Dorff was talking about how Pizzolatto has a dream of one day bringing back the characters from different seasons of True Detective to do a special series down the road where they all interact. And I think it's safe to say that a lot of people would be eager to see that. But getting back to tonight's episode, I was really into it, and I should mention that this was the first episode of the season directed by Daniel Sackham, who also directed episodes 6, 7, and 8. The director of the first 2 episodes, Jeremy Saulnier, had some sort of issues with Nick Pizzolatto, and they went their separate ways after 2 episodes. And then the remaining 2 episodes of this season are directed by Nick Pizzolatto himself, and it would be interesting to see a taste of his directing style in next week's episode, in particular because he shared writing duties with David Milch. But what was cool about tonight's episode is how it really showcased this incredible range of conflicting emotions being expressed by Mahershala Ali as Wayne Hayes. Clearly, something's just eating him up in 1990 as well as in 2015, because in 2015, we see him talking to a doctor about his big blackout, which led up to the moment where he basically kind of came to at the intersection of Shoepick and Briarwood. When his son suggests that he makes some changes, Hayes basically says that he'll kill himself if anyone mentions the rest home. But his interactions with his wife Amelia were really interesting as well back in 1990, where they're basically investigating the drugstore Julie was seeing, and they're joking about getting a hotel room and spending the whole night making love and getting drunk. But then we also see in 1990 how much tension there was between them. In particular, anytime Amelia gets excited about the information she's gathering on Julie's disappearance. And probably the most intense scene in the entire episode, we see Hayes just going berserk in this Walmart when his daughter Rebecca goes missing temporarily. And I imagine we'll learn more in future episodes about why she moved away as an adult and why they've become so estranged. But getting down to the nitty-gritty about the disappearance of the Purcell kids, there are a couple of major revelations related to this episode. The first is that at some point, Hayes got completely screwed over professionally after the initial investigation. In 1990, we see Roland making a very specific reference to that. And it's also really sad to see that by 1990, Roland and Hayes basically never see each other. They were really good friends when they were partners, but when they stopped working together, they just completely drifted apart. And while we don't know yet how Hayes got screwed over, it has blocked the multiple attempts by Roland to try to transfer Hayes over to his division. Also, quick side note, Stephen Dorff is absolutely just kicking ass in his role as Roland West. His accent is absolutely incredible. But back in 1980, he and Hayes realized that the Purcell kids had been dishonest and had basically been carrying on a secret relationship with these secret friends for quite a while. Julie had all these handwritten notes in a Hoyt Foods bag, while her brother was involved in this ongoing role-playing game. Also, for younger viewers out there, they might not know this, but in the early 80s, role-playing games, specifically Dungeons & Dragons, were incredibly controversial. Some kids absolutely lost their fucking minds playing these games. But speaking for myself, I played D&D for years. I actually brought out some of my dice that I've been keeping since high school, and I have to say that these dice have incredible sentimental value for me, but they're not involved in any murder cases. But I don't know if you can see them or not, but I've also got a lot of my first and second edition D&D books still on my shelf to this day. Where there's a major breakthrough in the case out in the woods when Hayes finds Will's dice, as well as some other toys and dolls in the woods, near this bloody stone which has little strands of hair still hanging off of it where Will was killed. All I have to say is that Hayes is one hell of a tracker. Also, one quick thing about the Hoyt Foods bag, they're the ones behind the reward being offered for the Purcells, but they also run a charity for sick kids. I have no evidence to support this, but something tells me there's some freaks or some perverts or some murderers among their ranks. But right now, that's just an instinct I'm feeling. I have nothing tangible to support that. But one of the big mysteries is this couple that was repeatedly seen in a nice brown sedan. The couple is a black man and a white woman. And in 2015, Hayes learns that every attempt by witnesses to share this info was ignored by the police. And Hayes has this brief memory about the sedan's tire tread, but all of this smells like some sort of massive cover-up to me. Another major mystery from this episode is what is in the bag that the trash man removes from his shed. It almost didn't register for me initially, but if you look, the shape of the bag looks like a small body or a small child. And the reason I didn't notice is that I was still reacting to this horrible beatdown he received by some of the locals who want him to stay out of the area. But whether or not that's a different child or a child at all, or Julie, I really can't say at this point. But one of the big things that separates True Detective from your typical cop show is when it gets really weird and really cosmic. And we got our first scene where the show went totally cosmic. There were a lot of those ingredients in season 1, like when Matthew McConaughey just completely spaces out and looks off into space. But in this episode, we see Hayes in 2015 talking to his dead wife Amelia about multiple dimensions and the past and the present and the future all blurring together. And this is key. Amelia mentioned something Hayes withheld a long time ago that he now worries might be found. What that could be will take a smarter person than myself to determine. I imagine it is right there by that intersection where he woke up at the end of episode 2. But the final breakthrough of this episode is when Hayes is going through an old photo album and he finds all these pictures of Will's first communion, where in the pictures he's in the exact same position with his hands that they found him in when they found his body. But what really sealed the deal for me on this episode was the final scene. And I think it's the best scene that we've seen yet in the season to date. But we have this really cool reunion in 1990 where Roland comes to a bar that only serves veterans, and he finds Hayes there and he's tilting a few back. And Hayes and the bartender bust Roland's balls a bit because he's not a veteran, but finally Roland's able to get a drink. And Roland tells Hayes that he'll be running the task force on the reopened Purcell case. And Hayes says straight up that Roland got the gig due to the pigmentation of his skin. But Roland counters that if not for Hayes' big mouth, he'd probably be Roland's boss by now due to affirmative action. In any case, Roland really wants Hayes on his crew as a detective, and Hayes finally gives in and says that he's sorry about the pigmentation crack. Roland says, "No, you're not." He's like, "Well, half sorry." But seeing their reconciliation after having drifted apart, it just put a huge smile on my face because that racial tension will probably never completely go away, but in the end, their friendship is much stronger. So overall, I just thought it was a really satisfying scene and the perfect way to bring the episode to a close. So I think that's all I have for now, but I really did enjoy tonight's episode. The jury's still out on whether or not I'll do reactions to each and every single episode. It all depends upon whether or not I feel like I have anything to contribute or anything really to say. But fingers crossed, hopefully each and every episode will give us something really juicy to sink our teeth into. But I can't thank you enough for watching my video. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. But if you want to talk about the show or any topic under the sun, by far the best place to reach me is always on Twitter, and there's a link in the show notes below to find me at Colbrax. But I can't thank you enough for watching my video. If you're living in the Northeast like I am, try and stay warm. It's going down to about 8 or 9 degrees tonight. Hopefully the power won't shut down before I finish doing this review. But it's time to wrap this sucker up, so thanks again for watching, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.